Hey, this is Annie. Welcome to GuitarMessenger.com. I'm sitting here with Evan Brewer of the Faceless. Evan, you have been in the Faceless for about a year now.
Correct.
What is it like looking back?
Kind of uneventful. We
Really?
haven't done that much in a year. We've just been writing. You know, we've toured Europe, done some stuff in the U.S. This is really the first full U.S. tour we've done, even since I got in the band.
Really?
But from a Faceless standpoint, it's mostly been like behind the scenes stuff going on.
Really?
Yeah, so.
How did you initially come upon the opportunity to play in the Faceless?
Well, they needed a bass player, so they called me, you know. I've known those guys since before they had a record deal. When I was in a band called Reflux, they used to open up for us in L.A.
Oh, okay.
And so I've known them, and we've been great friends for years. So they
Wow.
just need a bass player, they called me, so I made it happen.
So you were already like really acquainted with them and you were a big
Oh,
fan
yeah.
of their music?
I mean, aside from them having opened for the band Reflux, they did shows with Reflux. We did full U.S. tours when I was in Animosity with the Faceless. We're just good friends. We've known each other for years. So it made sense. You just called me and asked me if I wanted to do it, you know.
Cool. That seems like a really easy transition for them to be able to take you in as their bass player then.
Yeah, it was a good fit. I mean, you don't have to go through that whole thing of like hooking up with someone and, you know, you may have a pretty good idea that you would connect musically, but you wouldn't know that the personalities would mesh or whatever.
Exactly.
So we didn't have to worry about that. So that makes it easy, yeah.
Definitely. So obviously you're a very dynamic bass player and you've really set yourself apart from a lot of metal bass players that are existing right now. Obviously bass isn't necessarily the type of lead instrument, but you've really, you know, made a point to show that it can be. Can we expect a lot of solo bass work on the Faceless album coming up? Or?
No,
Not really.
not at all. I appreciate what you said too, by the way. Thank you very much.
Of course.
But, you know, that's the beauty of doing a solo album. You can put those ideas there, you know, because I love doing that whole solo thing. I love using the bass in unorthodox ways. That's a huge part of me as a player.
Right.
But another huge part of me as a player is traditional bass playing. And so it's really nice having put all those ideas in that format so that I don't really have to do that stuff there. You know, if a part calls for, there's going to be parts that are going to have interesting bass lines, of course, but it's going to be a traditional bass playing approach, you know, and that's actually, it's nice having done the solo work because then I can go back with a regular band and I just really enjoy just playing with my fingers or just outlining chords or doing walking bass lines and not worrying about cramming all that flash in with them, you know.
Really?
I mean,
Okay.
they've got so much going on that like it, yeah, you know, again, I want to say, you know, the bass lines that are coming out very interesting, but they're very traditional bass playing approach.
Okay.
You know, finger style and stuff.
So would you say that you prefer playing in a more band context, like rhythmically keeping the band together, or would you more likely want to pursue a solo career?
I'm not big into one or the other. Mm-hmm. You know, I try to not set limitations for myself. I want to do both.
Yeah.
You know, because for me, I've come to terms with the fact that where I'm at as a player, there's not ever going to be one band that's going to be the ultimate satisfying band because I like to play multiple genres, you know. Mm-hmm. There's not going to ever be one project, whether it be my solo project, even my solo project, that will completely fulfill me. So it's going to take a lot of musical interaction. You know, if you really connected with a person and you loved being around that person and talking to them, you wouldn't say, well, this is the only person I'm ever going to talk to again for the rest of my life.
Right.
You would still want to interact with other people.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah, you'd still want to know other people and have other experiences. So for me, I'm always going to be a busy bee. I'll be doing all
Doing
sorts
everything.
of stuff. Yeah.
That's great. So I'm really curious as to what type of things you're influenced by as far as your solo bass, your album alone. Obviously, you're not influenced by other solo bass albums. I've never heard of that ever before. I think it's so unique. And I was just wondering, like, what kind of music and artists have influenced you to create that type of music?
Not bass players, really. You know, that's what's
Okay.
cool. Mm-hmm. Like, it's about taking other instruments, you know, and what you hear from another instrument and applying it to your instrument. It's a very easy way to just be original, you know, like so many people say they have a hard time finding their own voice or they have a hard time being an individual, but to me it's so easy. It's like there's a million things you can do. Like go learn a piano part and play it on your lap like a piano. You know, play the bass here and the chords here, or flip your bass upside down, or tune your bass weird, or play an acoustic guitar part on the bass. Or I could just sit here for all day and name a million different ways to be original right off the bat. So like for me, I always go outside of the instrument, you know. If I hear a guitar player doing a crazy lead, well, I've never said, well, I can't do that. I've always been like, well, I want to be able to do that on my bass. Who cares? It's just a bass. It's not any set way to play it, so who cares? Just play it however. And that's just been my whole approach, like play chords on it, just do anything, you know?
That's
so
cool.
Mostly I would say I'm not influenced by players as much as the sound that instruments make. I'll hear a drummer and I'll say, wow, how could I translate that? Or I'll hear a piano, or I'll hear an acoustic guitar, you know, or a genre style of play, and I'll say, I want to do that I want to do that.
On bass.
Yeah. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
So was there a lot of sampling or synthesis involved at all?
Absolutely none on that album. Every sound on the album came from a bass guitar. So no other electronic elements, no other instruments, no other people involved in the process in any way. Just me, a recording setup, and a bunch of basses. That's it.
So is that tapping technique you use with like both of your hands based on taking a piano part and playing it on your bass? Is that mostly where that came from?
Yeah, I think two-hand tapping on any instrument is roughly derived from a piano, but where it really becomes piano-like is splitting up the instruments, because then you've got the thing where you can ring a chord, and what would be tapping in front of the chord would mute these notes behind the tapping. You tap on a different instrument, this chord continues to ring, and you're able to voice over it without dampening the notes that you're ringing behind it. That's where you get into that voicing, because you can hit this note, sustain it, and then play a solo over it on piano, which is something
resonates. So.
Exactly. This doesn't stop, and that was the whole approach behind doing the two bass thing. And it's a really useful tool. Like it's not it looks crazy, of course, but it's not a show-off thing. It's a very practical thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing harmonies with yourself. Like you're it's a lot of musical
Very cool.
stuff going on.
I plan on doing a lot more of that stuff. To me, that's hitting on what I'm into right now creatively.
Very unique,
Like
yeah.
I really like that approach. I think it's very cool, the stuff you can do. I suggest if anybody's got two instruments laying around, you should mess with it, because it's very fun.
Did you start out as a bass player, or did you start out as a piano player?
I've always been a bassist, you know. I was never into guitar at all. I'm kind of getting into guitar now a little bit. It's really fun. I got an acoustic guitar, so I like it. It's a cool instrument, but for me, I've just always been a bass player from day one.
Did you initially have private lessons or any sort of like instruction, or did you mostly kind of just start playing on your own and experimenting?
Well, I got very lucky. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and so there's a very eclectic music scene there. And I got very lucky at a pretty young age, about probably 3 or 4 years into playing. You know, I was already doing quite a bit with the bass, quite a bit for a young kid as well. But someone hooked me up with Reggie Wooten, the oldest brother of the Wooten brothers. And he's the guitar player. He taught all of them how to play their instruments. And hooking up with him from an early age, we became very close. We're still very close friends. And we play all the time. And being around those Wooten guys and all that whole community, just at a very young age, set the bar extremely high. You know, it was like they were doing extreme things with their instruments, but it became very normal. You know, you're sort of a product of your environment. If you don't see something, if you've never heard someone speak English, you're not going to just be able to speak English out of nowhere, having never even heard the language.
That's
you
true.
know, so, you know, it became to where some guy playing like this and doing all this crazy stuff was completely routine and normal for me, you know, growing up. So that experience really created what you see now in a large part. And then, also for me, on the note of, you know, how I learned. A lot of independent study in correlation with that, and also if I ever saw a player that I really respected or liked, I would just go out of my way to connect with them and get like private lessons with them, or just even pick their brain.
So did
Kinda
that
thing.
force you to want to get better or improve yourself, or was it more of
Well, I don't know if that necessarily had much play in what I do on my instrument, but what it did was gave me a profound respect for what it means to be an artist. And if you have someone that cares about what you do, it taught me to take that very seriously. You know, it taught me if someone comes up to me and wants to talk to me, to make time for them, you know, to always show them, because you can actually make a big difference in someone's life
You really
by
can.
showing them a few things. You know, just taking 2 minutes out of your day. I mean, who cares? Like, who am I? It's like, I get off stage, I'm gonna go like up to the dressing room and sit there alone. I'd rather just talk to people, you know?
That makes sense.
So that's what I learned from that experience, you know, but I suggest kids, if or any player, whatever old you are, if there's someone you respect, reach out to them. These days it's even easier with all the social media and stuff to actually connect
Absolutely.
with the people that you want to, if you want to pick their brain, you can actually ask them questions.
Yeah, you can. So I heard you were able to go on tour with Animals as Leaders
Yeah.
for your solo bass album. I've never really seen a solo artist just come out and play during a metal show like that. What was the crowd response like? What was that experience like for you?
Completely amazing. It was unbelievable, man. I mean, you know, I knew it was going to go well. I went into it with that attitude. So I felt like that's what was going to happen. And it went amazing. Like, people were completely engaged the whole time. And it's tough to put together a show when it's just you.
Definitely.
That's going to have a good flow and things like that. But it went really well, you know, and it was fun being out with them. We've been, you know, good friends. I was in a band with the guitar player of Animals as Leaders. I was in a different band with the drummer of Animals as Leaders. So the only one I had not actually been in a band with was Javier. So already knowing those guys, I was riding with them, and it was basically like a reunion of sorts. So it was fun on multiple levels. I also grew a lot as a player doing that solo stuff, and I still perform that solo stuff and have desire to do a lot more, but that tour was very productive for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What other sorts of projects were you in prior to the Faceless?
Okay, well, I was in the band with Tosin, the Animals as Leaders dude. That band was Reflux.
Reflux, okay.
It's like we
It's a
kind
metal
of,
band?
yeah, like metal or whatever. We kind of like honed some of our skills together. That time, more than what we did with the band, for me and him individually, was about being in the same room together, bouncing ideas off each other, and you know, it was productive. He got a lot from me, I got a lot from him. Then after that, I was on that band Animosity from San Francisco. That was with the drummer of Animals as Leaders.
Okay.
And growing up, I did a ton of like freelance work around Nashville, and that's where I really honed the musicality aspect of what I do. That's, you know, how I learned how to play music. I think so often in heavy music, it's so riff based, you can get by without actually knowing anything about music. Does that
Very
make sense?
true. No, it's absolutely true. I
Yeah.
agree with that.
So
Especially
the
in
time
metal.
in Nashville was the main development as far as melody, rhythm, and harmony, you know, musicality. Also chops, but mostly just like I was forced into a lot of situations where maybe I'd go out somewhere and be asked to sit in at like just a particular style gig, country, jazz, R&B, funk, and would be forced out of my comfort zone at a very early age, and it taught me that I needed to be well-rounded. In that city, you almost have to be well-rounded. So those experiences were vital. Now, obviously, I have the solo bass thing. I also have a project that I write all the music and produce, and it's with a singer named Barry Donegan. His band's called Look What I Did. The project's called Climaxes. We have like a whole album of material, but it's just sitting around. We don't know what we're gonna do with it.
Oh, cool.
If we don't put it out on a label, we'll probably just put it up for free or something. But it's really cool. It's fun working with singers.
Yeah.
They're just a different take on the whole thing. And then I got a few other things in the works. I got like 4 more solo songs right now.
Awesome. So it sounds like Nashville is a place to just really get all sorts of opportunities in music. Would you encourage other people to go to Nashville and kind of delve into that? Does that make sense? Or do you think in other places it could be the same? Or?
I don't think that Nashville's had a lot of musical opportunity for me in terms of gigs and like work. Like all my stuff has come outside of that.
Yeah.
Outside of that city for whatever reason. What it's had is a lot of opportunity early on to grow and to learn from people. There's a wealth of knowledge there.
Okay.
You know, I would suggest if you wanted to go there for a little while and try to learn from people, that it would be a very good place to do that. If you're going there to try to get gigs, unless you're trying to, depending on what you're trying to do, I mean, it may work for you, but it didn't really work for me.
But you learned a lot, and you were able to like gain a lot of knowledge just from the people that live there.
Absolutely, it's a very, very nice place. Like it's worth going for sure and checking out. And if you go, contact me. We can maybe meet up.
So you've said a lot of really great, encouraging things for people, other bass players to do, like to kind of get to where you are. Do you have any last words, any advice to bass players to kind of get to the point where you are, being able to tour and release an album?
I mean, I don't know if I have advice for bass players as much as, or even really musicians, as much as just people or artists in general. My advice would be to seek inspiration. You know, actively seek out things to inspire you, because if you don't have a fire or a passion, you're only going to go so far, you know. Like, for me, it was very important, and it's still very important to reach out, play all the time with different players, you know, try really hard to find inspiration, scour the internet for people that are doing cool stuff, you know, go out, look for people who are interesting, pick their brains, talk to them, get into conversations with them. I think everything about being an artist requires inspiration. For you to have conviction in your music, for you to be productive and crank out a lot of material and have it be something that's gonna be infectious, something that people are gonna enjoy, you have to be inspired about what you do. So however you get it, just get it. That's the most important part. That's my advice.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking with me.
Sure. It was a pleasure.
And it was very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.